Russia's proxy conflicts in Eastern Europe, NATO's response. The relationship between Russia and NATO has been a contentious issue since the end of the Cold War. Russia sees NATO as a threat to its national security, whereas NATO regards Russia as a potential aggressor. The conflict between these two entities has resulted in proxy conflicts in Eastern Europe, where Moscow uses local actors to advance its interests. NATO has responded to these conflicts by increasing its military presence in the region and working with local allies. One of the most significant proxy conflicts in Eastern Europe is the conflict in Ukraine. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea and began supporting separatists in eastern Ukraine. The conflict has resulted in the deaths of over 13,000 people and has displaced millions. NATO has responded to this conflict by imposing economic sanctions on Russia and increasing military support for Ukraine. NATO has also increased its military presence in the region by deploying troops to the Baltic states and Poland. In 2016, NATO established a multinational battalion in each of the Baltic states and Poland, which is led by a rotating NATO member. The presence of NATO troops in these countries serves as a deterrent to Russian aggression and reassures NATO's allies in the region. NATO has also worked with local allies to counter Russian influence in Eastern Europe. One such ally is Georgia, which has been at odds with Russia since the 2008 war in which Russia annexed two Georgian territories. NATO has provided military support to Georgia and has encouraged its Euro-Atlantic aspirations. In 2019, NATO opened its first training center in Georgia, which provides training to Georgian soldiers and strengthens the country's defense capabilities. Another local ally that NATO has worked with is Ukraine. In addition to providing military support, NATO has also worked with Ukraine to reform its defense sector and enhance its transparency and accountability. NATO has also provided political and economic support to Ukraine in its efforts to modernize its economy and fight corruption. Despite NATO's efforts to respond to Russia's proxy conflicts in Eastern Europe, there are still challenges that need to be addressed. One challenge is the lack of unity within NATO itself. Some NATO members, such as Germany, have economic ties with Russia and are hesitant to impose sanctions. This lack of unity weakens NATO's response to Russian aggression. Another challenge is the lack of political will to provide military support to NATO's allies in the region. NATO's members are reluctant to provide military support due to the fear of provoking Russia. However, this lack of military support undermines NATO's credibility and the security of its allies in the region. In addition to these challenges, there is also the risk of escalation. Russia's actions in Ukraine have already resulted in a significant increase in tensions between NATO and Russia. Any further escalation of the conflict could lead to a direct military confrontation, which would have dire consequences for the security of the region and the world. In conclusion, Russia's proxy conflicts in Eastern Europe pose a significant threat to the stability and security of the region. NATO has responded to these conflicts by increasing its military presence in the region, imposing economic sanctions on Russia, and working with local allies. However, there are still challenges that need to be addressed, such as the lack of unity within NATO and the lack of political will to provide military support. These challenges, combined with the risk of escalation, make it imperative that NATO continues to prioritize the security of its Eastern European allies and work towards a peaceful resolution of the conflict with Russia.